As I was looking at today's gospel and kind of reflecting, there is a word that pops up from time to time, whether it be in ads, whether it be on social media, whether it be in just promotional stuff. But there's a word that I'm always very, very, very skeptical of that pops up from time to time, and that is the word free. I was scrolling through social media the other day and I saw an ad for something. And it was like, buy a hoodie, get 2 free shirts, or something like that. And I went click on the hoodie thing, and sure enough, you want to buy a hoodie? It's like $100, and then the 2 free shirts. I'm like, oh yeah, great. Girl math would tell you, oh, I did great, and I made a good deal, and actually I saved money, so it was all right. And if you don't know what girl math is, just ask one of the girls who are laughing right now, and they'll explain it to you. $500 later, it's like, I saved $150. No, you didn't. You spent $500 you don't have. Anyway, but as I was like, every time I see that word though, the word free, it's always one of those things that I get very, very skeptical of, because there are very few things that are actually free. Most of the time, they're free with some fine print. A few years back, whenever Louisiana had passed the law to make sports gambling legal, so where apps and things were taken off, I got a phone call. It was a couple of days before the Super Bowl. It was the Bengals and the Rams Super Bowl. I remember a couple of days before, I get a phone call from my sister, and she tells me, she says, "Hey, there's one of these apps that is doing a deal." And if you put in like $50, you get $200 of free bets. And I told her, like, so I'm sitting there and I hear this, and my first thought is, my addictive personality, sports, and money all being in one app, I need to not download that. I need to not stay far away from it. I'm going to be very, very far in the hole, and I'm going to wish that I was doing girl math, right? But I just remember doing this, and I'm just like, there's no chance, not at all. So I remember my sister, she says this, $50 and you get $200 of free bets. And my response to her was, I was like, that's not a good thing for me. I'm not doing that. There's no chance. Like, somebody is sitting there knowing that if they give you 200, they got you hooked in and all this kind of stuff. Like, they're not giving you anything in the long run. They're going to get the return on the investment, all this kind of stuff. And my sister says, I don't care if you sign up or not. I'm calling you because I did it and I need help with the bets. And I'm like, okay, so after about 20 minutes of conversation and going through all the prop bets and all the different things, we settled on picking the Bengals in the spread, but picking like against the spread, but picking the Rams on the money line. She won both because of her $50 and $200 of quote unquote free bets. She walked away with $1,200. And I remember at the end of it saying, "Hey, I'm just reminding you, 10% goes to the church and 20% goes to your agent, so you owe me 30%." All right. She didn't buy that. But anyway, but I remember she wins, she gets all this stuff, she shows up in her account. The next day she calls me and she says, "Hey, by the way, learned something." So what's that? She says, "It's actually, you win, but you can't cash out. You then have to rebet it." I was like, see, they got you. She put money on the Astros to win the World Series. She walked away with like $4,000. But anyway, in all of that though, I remember like there was something about the free that was very, very enticing. It was very, very exciting, but free does not mean free. Free meant free with some conditions. It's interesting because in our first reading today, whenever we hear this come to you all who are thirsty, come and drink, come without paying, without cost. God is saying, right, through the prophet Isaiah, that my love is given freely. That everything you need, my grace, what's going to satiate the thirst that you have, what's going to be the fulfillment of all the desire that you have in your heart, it is freely given to you. But, just like anything that's free, I think there's some fine print that sometimes we miss. Because God can give it. God does give it. He gives everything and anything that we could possibly desire and want. The question is, do we receive it? See, John of the Cross had an image where he said, if the sun fails to illuminate a room, it's not because the sun is not giving its light. It's because the windows are either dirty or obstructed. This morning, I woke up, and when I was waking up, usually just where my room is, like I could tell that it's daylight outside, but the cold front was coming through, brings us down to 95 degrees as opposed to 105. But the cold front was coming through, the clouds were there. And I remember I woke up this morning, I was like kind of out of it because it's whatever time in the morning, but I'm looking outside and it's dark in my room. It's not because the sun's not doing its job, it's because it's obstructed, cloudy. The sun's going to give its light. The sun's going to give its warmth. The sun's going to pour out the light before, but the windows either can receive the light or can block it. In the same way, God is going to give His grace. He's going to give what we need, and He's going to pour it out completely and totally again and again and again, over and over and over. He never gets bored of doing it, and yet, the question is, are we in a place to receive it? It's freely given. But do we receive? You see, our gospel, I think, today teaches us it through this miracle how we're called to receive. It's the only miracle, today's gospel, the feeding of the 5,000. It's the only miracle, the multiplication of loaves and fish, is the only miracle that is reported in all four gospels. Some gospels have some gospels have others, but this is the only one that's reported in all four. And it's actually a really, really interesting situation. It's a really interesting story. It's probably the most famous of all the miracles, right? Because it's been reported so often. But one of the things that we see is whenever Jesus, the context of today is actually really beautiful. So Jesus finds out that his cousin, John the Baptist, has been killed. And as he does, he is off and he wants to go and mourn. And as he goes to a deserted place, he's going to go pray, he's going to go mourn, he's going to have his moment. And as he does this, the people follow him out to this deserted place. He's trying to get away from people, and yet they find out where he's gone and they follow him there. And as they follow him, they find he comes out of this kind of space of quiet and this space of mourning. And when he does, he sees this crowd waiting for him, and they are like sheep without a shepherd. He has pity for them. They are desiring him to say something, do something, be with them, like heal them, whatever. Like they have a desire that they're coming to Jesus with, and he can't help but say, you know what, I feel this sadness, I feel this mourning, and yet this pulls me out of myself. This pulls me out of the emotion to meet these people where they are. So it's a very, very compassionate space that Jesus finds himself in. So he starts teaching, he starts healing, he starts preaching. And he preaches for a while, it sounds like. As he's preaching and he's doing this, and like the apostles come to him and they're like, hey, you're talking a while, right? Like people are hungry. Kind of like me with 10:30 mass. Like people are hungry, like they're ready to go. Like let them go home, let them go to the villages so that they can feed. Like they can feed themselves, like good food, right? So they can take care of themselves. And Jesus turns to the apostles, he turns to his disciples, and he says to them, no, we don't need to send them away. You feed them. It's interesting because when we look at the different accounts, they add like little details here and there. Like today we heard that there's 5,000 not counting men, women and children. Some don't say that. In one of the Gospels, they actually say the source of where the loaves and fish come from. It's in John's Gospel. In John's Gospel, this is what we hear. That they're talking about the amount of people, right? And it says, 200 days' wages would not buy enough food for each of them to get a little. Then one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there's a kid here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many? There's a kid here that has the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, but what would that do to help out so many people? But Jesus looks at him and says, give me the loaves. Now, I think there's something, if we want to put ourselves, typically whenever I pray with like different scriptures and things like that, different miracles or different episodes that might be kind of common, one of the things we can do in a way to kind of pray with scripture is to put ourselves in the place of somebody in the story. In particular, think of Andrew, the apostle. He sees this kid. Jesus is saying, you give them food. He's looking around. Nobody brought food. Nobody knew how long they were going to be out there, right? For whatever reason, they're not prepared for this. And yet, they have 5,000 people in front of them. They have the entirety of Nichols campus in front of them. And he sees a kid that has 5 little loaves of bread and 2 fish. I almost feel like whenever Andrew says this to Jesus, look, this kid has 5 loaves and 2 fish. I almost feel like he's being sarcastic. At least that's how I would be like, yeah, hey, he's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. Maybe we could make like fillet of fish for like 3 people and everybody will eat, right? Like, and Jesus says, okay, give me the fish. Give it to me. The faithfulness of this kid, having so little, limited resources, and coming to Jesus and giving it to him, teaches the apostles something. By worldly standards, he's got barely enough to make a couple of sandwiches. By worldly standards, he has so little that is insignificant and useless in such a big situation. And in his hands is nothing. But what he has, he says, Lord, I give you all of it. You do something with it. Then, after Jesus says the blessing over this food, what does he do? He then gives the loaves and the fish. He separates it. He gives it to the disciples, and he tells them, you go out and serve the people. Again, think of Andrew. Discovered the 5 loaves and 2 fish, kind of sarcastic, kind of wondering, what can this really do? In the hands of Jesus, it can do a lot. He then looks at him and says, here you go. And as he's walking around serving the people, he's watching this loaf and this fish multiply. He goes to a person, and then another, and then another, and then another, and then another. And he's watching a miracle happen at his fingertips. He's watching people eat of what should have run out 25 minutes ago, and yet people are still taking from the same little plate, from the same little portion, until everybody's satisfied and full. I think of having a front row seat as one of the disciples and learning 2 things in this. Number 1, from the kid, the little bit that you have, what you might see as insignificant, Lord, I'm going to entrust to you. I don't have a lot to give. I don't have a lot of skill. I don't have a lot of intelligence. I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of fill in the blank. I don't have a lot of whatever it is. But Lord, I give you all of it. God doesn't need us to give him a lot. He's asking us for us to give him all of whatever we got. We don't need to be the most eloquent speaker. We don't need to be the most intelligent person. We don't need to be the most learned in theology. We don't need to be the most devout person. We don't need to be the most disciplined. We don't need to be the whatever, right? We don't have to have the superlative. God is simply asking and saying, if you want to follow me, just give me everything that you got. And let me decide if it's insignificant or not. Let me decide if it's too little. Because it probably isn't. I think Andrew, on that hill that day, learns a lesson. And I'm going to give you everything that I got, Lord. And let you use it as you see fit. The second thing, and I think just as important, that we learn today in this, that the apostles walk away from this miracle with, is that when they go from place to place and they watch that it doesn't run out, that the bread doesn't go away, the fish doesn't go away, that everybody gets their fill, everybody gets more, that God always has more and more and more, that Jesus always made more and more and more until everybody was satisfied, that this more is what God sees, that the worldly being full of food is one thing, but it's just meant to be something that points to a greater reality, that a miracle on earth, a physical miracle, is meant to be something that points to a greater reality, and that is that God's mercy, God's love, never is exhausted. A couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with somebody, and they said, like, every time I go to confession, I feel like, Father, I could look at the priest and I could say everything I said last week. Every time I go to confession, I just say, like, I'm listing the same sins. Like, it's almost like, bless me, Father, if I have sinned. Again, it's been a week since my last confession, and down the same list of the same exact list for the same reasons. And this person was frustrated. They said, what do I do with that? And I said, it's easy. Keep going. We get we are so much quicker to get tired of asking for forgiveness than God is in forgiving. We are so much quicker to quit asking for God's grace than he tires of giving us his grace. We get tired of reflecting on his love, and yet he still continues to give us his love. God's love and God's mercy are never exhausted. And they're way more valuable than a little bit of food. This very, very common miracle, this very, very familiar miracle that we hear about in today's gospel, teaches us two fundamental things when it comes to our relationship with God. That everything we are, everything we have, God says, look, put it at my feet and let me use it. And then, that God's love, God's mercy, God's generosity is never exhausted. The reality is that this is a great piece of news for us. The gospel, the word gospel stands for good news. It's the best news in the world for us. Because the reality is, without it, before Jesus comes into the world, before the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus, before he defeats death, before he is the expiation for our sins, every one of us was destined for hell. And it's probably not something we want to think about. But the reality is that we need God's grace. And it's infinite. We need God's mercy. And it's never exhausted. We need God's generosity. And he's always ready to provide. When we come to Mass tonight, we need him. When we go to confession, we need him. And he's always there to fulfill our every need. May we never get tired of approaching the Lord. May we always give whatever it is that we have. May we learn from today that God is never outdone or exhausted in his love, his mercy, and generosity.